You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt. We are coming to you on August 24th of 2021. It's going to be a kind of a lighter episode, but some really intriguing talking points. We had a historic home run this week. We had another pitcher ejection for substance abuse. We have a borderline Hall of Famer, which we'll get into that a little bit more, that signed an extension this week, and an interesting proposal between MLB and the Players Association regarding the luxury tax. But before we jump into all of that, let's bring in Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty good. Just had having a pretty good week. It's been hot as heck outside. I mean, it's not as hot as it is in California, like where you are, but it's it's humid. So it's the heat index is over 100 today, and it's that like super heavy type of hot right now, where it's just you walk outside and 2 minutes later you're just soaked in sweat. It's bad, but yeah. Anyways, it's been good. So how are you doing?
Trying not to burn. California decided it wanted to get back into its burn season and just go absolutely crazy. So I service kind of like some of the fire departments here with kind of like nuts and bolts for what I do or whatever. And I was talking to the guy yesterday, and he's like I came in on Monday morning and I had like 10 rigs that were broken down out back. He's like, just everything that is going up there is breaking down and like coming back, and they need it fixed immediately.
Yeah.
Like, it's just insane with how much fire and, you know, the ash and all that stuff. But luckily it's nowhere around me at this moment, and hopefully the winds don't take it anyway. But definitely not fun when those kind of conditions come around.
No doubt.
Well, let's go ahead and kind of jump right into this episode. We hinted with the historic home run, and that was Miguel Cabrera hit his 500th career home run, moving him into 28th all-time on the home runs list.
Yeah, Miguel Cabrera is a historically good home run hitter, but his biggest thing is just being a great hitter in general. Um, he is a guy who he's gonna hit as long as he plays another year. He will hit his 3,000th hit at some point. He's currently at I believe 2955 before today. He actually had his 501st home run today, but he's a guy he's definitely gonna get close to. He's gonna get very close to hitting. He's gonna have 3,000 hits, 500 home runs. There's not many players who have done that, and including guys like Barry Bonds that do that. He didn't have 3,000 hits. Like, that's a very rare feat, and so that's some good stuff. Congrats to Miguel Cabrera. Been a member of the Tigers for a long time. Hit a lot of home runs with the Marlins before becoming a Tiger, and he was a big part of some really good teams there, and won a World Series in Miami. Been in the postseason, been in the playoffs. It kind of sucks to see his career go out on not being on a good team, but good for him, and congrats to him on the 500th home run. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's been a historic hitter throughout his career. You know, he's won home run titles. He won the Triple Crown that year with the Tigers. Just a couple interesting stats that I had found when I was kind of like looking this stuff up. He has 41 two-homer games in his career and 2 3-homer games in his career. He's hit 50 home runs against the Cleveland Indians, the most of any team that he's hit against. He has 7 walk-off home runs in his career.
He had one in his debut, didn't he?
It doesn't say if it's his debut, but it just says the first one came off Al Levine, so that might be in his debut.
But yeah, that's super impressive. He's a guy who, he broke in as a outfielder. He's played multiple positions, went to third base, played first base. But, 70 wins above replacement in his career. Just an all-around 311 career average, which is really, really high. 388 on base. Not the highest walk rate ever, but, a good walk rate, 11% in his career. He's always hit the ball to both sides of the field. High batting average on balls in play due to that. You talk about his 2013 season and a 348 average with 44 home runs, 137 RBIs, Triple Crown, and 193 WRC plus. I think that's higher than Mike Trout's career high. So you get a guy, and a guy who's a first base only that puts up 9 wins above replacement is that's just incredible. I mean, he as a hitter, the dude was outstanding, and he's not as what he once was at this stage, but still, I mean, just what a great career for Miguel Cabrera, and I guess keep it still going. So
Yeah, moments like this allow you to kind of reflect on the career a little bit more. Um, like you said, a fantastic hitter all the way around. He has 4 batting titles. That ties him for the most with Ted Williams among people with the 500 home runs. And of right-handed hitters with 500 home runs and at least a 300 average, he's the 5th member ever. The other 4: Manny Ramirez, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and Frank Thomas.
it's
So
insane.
if that doesn't tell you the kind of the company that he's in as a hitter and kind of the greatness that we were able to, actually watch in our generation, and I mean that's fantastic.
Yeah, and longevity too. I mean, I know the last 3 or 4 years haven't been very good, but if he was for 13 years a guy who was a super feared hitter,
Yeah.
and I mean he was the guy he had an RBI in the famous NLCS game with the Steve Bartman play. Like that's how long
Mm-hmm.
he's been around. It's hard to believe that we still got players in the majors that were that were in that game. I mean, and Miguel Cabrera, he was a 20-year-old rookie, but still, like he was there. He played on that team, and like I say, just a great player. It seems like a good clubhouse personality. A veteran leader for the last several years, and a guy who really carried the Tigers for 3 or 4 years to. They went to what 3 World Series with him there. I think
Mm-hmm.
they went to the World Series twice with him there. I think
Yeah.
so because of the first one that they went to like in '06, he wasn't there yet, he was still in Miami, but just a fantastic player, and all the congratulations to him on what's been a great career. And we looking at the all-time home run list, he could rise a couple more spots. Eddie Murray is sitting there at 504, so he probably will pass him, I believe. He could pass Gary Sheffield's at 509, Mel Ott at 511, Eddie Matthews 512, Ernie Banks 512. So, if he plays one more year, he could maybe get to Ted Williams at 521, who's also tied with Willie McCovey. But I think he'll probably land somewhere around 21st all-time home run list or 22nd. So, really cool. Good for him, and be excited to see his last couple years, see what he can do, getting up on that all-time list. So,
Yeah, and one kind of last point I wanted to bring up, and that we can kind of talk about, and then we'll wrap the whole Miggy talk up. But I was listening to Sirius XM MLB radio a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about Miguel Cabrera and kind of the type of hitter, and had people on talking about him. And they brought up an interesting point that I hadn't really thought about. I knew he had always played at Comerica, but the old Marlins park that he played at was never really a hitter's ballpark either.
no,
So
it
he's
wasn't.
done a lot of this throughout his career at non-hitter friendly home ballparks. And if you look at his career, splits
Yep.
between home and road, he has a 321 at home. And we just said both of those are not at hitter friendly ballparks. He has a
Yeah.
301 average on the road, but the home runs are pretty much split down the middle. At
Yeah.
home, he has it's like 16 more games, but 248 home runs and 252 away home runs.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. You would think that with him having played in, especially in Comerica, that park is a cavern. Miami was a pretty tough place to hit. But he was in the old ballpark in Miami, so it wasn't quite as bad as Marlins Park. At least the first couple years of Marlins Park, I don't think. But Comerica is a terrible place to hit, like 420 to center. I mean, it's hard to do. So, and one final little point on Cabrera, and we'll move on. But we're not going to see another one of these for a while. 500th
No.
home run. The next guy in line that could possibly get there is Giancarlo Stanton. He's at 333 right now. Well, I guess I don't know if this is updated. He hit one tonight, but um, he's because Albert Pujols obviously is the active leader, but he's already over that. Miguel Cabrera, but Nelson Cruz is 40. He's at 443. I doubt he can get to 500. I mean, maybe, but I kind of doubt it. Robinson Cano, I doubt he plays again. He's at 334. He won't get there anyways. So Stanton really the next guy, and then you look down the list, and I mean, Justin Upton not really that effective anymore at 324. Joey Votto at 323. Evan Longoria at 314. All those guys are in their mid to upper 30s and still have over 180 or so to go. Then Mike Trout's there. He'll probably get there if he's healthy for a while. So he's at 310. So he might either Stanton or Trout will be the next guy to get there, which is kind of hard to believe that you'll be talking about them being the next guys to get to 500 home runs. This record, this 28 player club is going to stand as a 28 player club for at least five or so years at the very least. So
Yeah, I would say probably if depends on how the health of Stanton and Trout, but probably 4 to at least 5. It would be right around there. But let's go ahead and Mickey's going to be a for sure, no doubt Hall of Famer. Let's go to another kind of borderline Hall of Famer that can. Definitely a debate here, but that's Yadier Molina. Came out today and signed a 1-year, $10 million extension to stay with the St. Louis Cardinals, who he spent his whole career with. And I know he had talked about it before, but this kind of seems there's been rumors rumbling around since that came out that he signed it, that next year will kind of be his swan song, that it'll be his final season with the Cardinals, and after that he's going to retire.
yeah, Yadier Molina has been a fantastic catcher. I think he's a borderline Hall of Famer for sure. I wouldn't call him a surefire Hall of Famer, but I think he probably ends up getting in. But a guy who, and over his career, 55 wins above replacement. That's borderline Hall of Fame number. Probably a little low, but his defensive value in his career is one of the greatest ever. As a catcher, throwing out runners, framing pitches, just his receiving skills, his leadership. It's all been, everyone talks about intangibles with him, and typically that's not something that I like to talk about that much when it comes to baseball, but this is one of those situations where it is. And I mean, he's won multiple World Series titles. Um, great player. There was a 3-year stretch. He had the peak. There was a 3-year stretch where he was by far the best catcher in baseball, especially in 2011 and 2012 when he put up, or 2012, 2013, where he put up 7.7 wins above replacement in 2012 and 7.8 in 2013, and ran a 130 WRC plus in both of those seasons. A guy who, as a hitter, he's actually been pretty much exactly league average for his career. 99 for his career, WRC plus, 280 average, which is honestly pretty good, especially for a catcher. 331 on base, and which is solid, but 403 slugging's a little low. But a guy who he his value defensively and still being at least a threat offensively, especially the ability to make contact with ball and play. Um, he's been a great player for a long time, and he's a guy who I think will get in. But when it comes to next year, I mean, I don't know if next year's uh, the biggest thing when it comes to um, when it comes to um, when it comes to his talent level, his skill. He's put up .9 wins above replacement this year. His WRC plus has been below 90 the last 3 years. And he's still pretty good defensively, but he's not as good as he was. So, I mean, he'll still be useful next year, I think. But, the days of him playing 140 games and, being just the best, one of the best in the game is probably over. But
Yeah,
anyways,
I think it's more of his reputation, more than anything at this point. Like, he still commands respect from the pitchers. He still calls a great game. Now, if the pitches actually end up the right way or whatever, but the way that he's able to handle a pitching staff, he's one of those that he doesn't have to look into the dugout and get signs, or they have to worry about it. Like, he's able to control the whole game pretty much himself. And I think that that's a massive thing, especially for the Cardinals, who they are really good at generating young pitchers. But the last couple of years, they've kind of struggled with that and struggled with some injuries. So maybe next year coming back, they're going to get, like Dakota Hudson's going to come back next year. Maybe Alex Reyes is moving into a starting role again next year. Like having him behind the plate that can kind of just control everything. I think that's kind of what it is. And then to give him a true like swan song season per se, like I don't think anybody really knew what this year was going to bring. And I think that a lot of guys are kind of pushing that like retirement thing off to like, hey, let me do like one like last thing with all fans all the way through. And Yachty is kind of like how, like Mariano did it and Derek Jeter did it, where they announce it before the season and they're kind of gonna, fans everywhere are gonna go out and see him, and teams are gonna give him gifts as kind of a going away gift or whatever. But like you said, the offensive numbers aren't quite what they are anymore. The defensive numbers aren't quite, but I mean, 9-time Gold Glover, a 4-time Platinum Glove winner. He's still a 10-time All-Star. He's not going to get into the Hall of Fame based on just the numbers offensively. I mean, the defensive numbers speak for themselves, but it's going to be kind of his reputation that kind of gets him in to the Hall of Fame. And it's kind of like things how negative part with like a guy like Jeff Kent, who's not going to get in
Yeah.
because he has a bad reputation. I feel like Yachty's going to get in because he's, the longevity and kind of the reputation he has for the person and the type of player he is back there at catcher, rather than the, pure what do the numbers and stats say.
Yeah, and the just one last little mention on Yadier Molina too. In 2010, he had a 262 average, a 329 on base, and a 342 slugging, with 6 home runs in 136 games, with an 84 WRC plus. So he's a well below league average hitter. He was a pretty bad hitter that year, and he still put up 5 wins above replacement because of his defense. Like that, obviously defensive WAR, especially for catchers, can be a little bit skewed and shaky, but that's still impressive that was his value, and I think that just kind of goes to show you what he could do behind the plate, and his value to the team in general. So when he did become a really good hitter, he was really good. So
Yeah. Well, let's move on real quick. Just a quick mention that Caleb Smith of the Arizona Diamondbacks was the second pitcher ever ejected since the substance abuse. You know, what's it want to say? Substance abuse. What's the word I'm looking for?
banned the sticky stuff ban.
Yeah, the sticky stuff ban, but where they're looking at them. Anyways,
Yeah.
where they started checking pitchers in the middle of the games. He becomes the second pitcher ever. Remember, the first one was Hector Santiago, and this kind of sounds like the same issue of that he had rosin on his glove hand, and that
Yeah.
is supposedly banned throughout the rules. I still don't know why, because that gives you no competitive advantage at all. But supposedly he was, or he is suspended for 10 games. He is appealing. That was announced today, but as we've seen with Hector Santiago, I doubt that will go through.
Yeah. I think it's tough when that this has to be the outcome for some of these, because I don't know if he was cheating or if he was trying to do that, if he was trying to hide it, if he's telling the truth or not. But that's tough. I think if you are going to have a situation where someone does cheat, it would be something like that, where he's on a crappy team and it's a guy who's kind of trying to make it in the big leagues, but is not exactly like, he feels like he might need a little bit of help to do it, and that maybe he can try to hide it or something. But you know, I, I'm a fan of trying to limit that the sticky stuff spin rate junk. Like I think that's pretty. I would like for them to limit that. I think that's a good thing. But I would not. I do not like the sticky stuff. I don't like it when a player on accident gets suspended for this. Like if that is the case with him. So, um, I mean, it is what it is. Like
I just
they have rules, and he wasn't following them perfectly, and it's something that's been cracked down upon. And I don't know what the substance was, so I don't really know. If it was just rosin, then I mean, I think he should be fine. But at the
well,
same time, like,
that's the thing is are supposedly everyone said it's rosin. I mean, we will
yeah,
never actually know, but there is a rule clearly stated, and I don't know why this is, but that rosin, you can use rosin on your pitching hand. You can have rosin on your arm. On your pitching arm, you can have it there, but you cannot have it on your glove hand. Like it can't be on your wrist of your glove hand or anything. Why? Like why
Yeah,
if it's a proven substance that you
yeah.
supply, why is it oh you can have it on your pitching hand to help you on the ball, but on your wrist, like where you're sweating, where you would actually reach down like grab it, which is legal, sweat is
Yeah.
legal, and rosin, why is that illegal that you're kicking people out for 10 games?
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
what I don't
I don't.
understand.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, if it's in the rule book, they're enforcing it. So I get it. Like if he had rosin on his glove or something, like if it's against the rules and they say it's against the rules, then it's against the rules. But I mean, I agree with you. Like I don't think that if you get rosin on your glove hand, you should be thrown out of games and stuff. I think they need to look at changing that. But I
Right.
mean, that's something that that it's if it's against the rules, then I don't know what the umpire could specifically do about it. I mean, the umpires aren't going to just ignore the rules.
Yeah.
Like if it's against the rules, they're going to throw him out. So like it or not, whether that's a good thing or not, I mean, I don't really think that's a good thing if it's if it's just rosin. But
Right.
at the same time, like it's one of those things. So
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on to kind of the biggest story that we had happen this week, and that was last Wednesday's when it really came out. And that's kind of it's going to be a big talking point this offseason with what with the CBA getting ready to come up. But that's the luxury tax minimum and everything that MLB and the players have to negotiate on. And supposedly the league and the owners went to the Players Association with um, a proposal for what it should look like, and that they wanted to make a new salary floor, which right now there's not a salary floor, so you can have teams spending $20 million if they want to put a team out, and you have teams like the Dodgers who are spending 237 million. So, anyways, they wanted to make this plan where there's a salary minimum of $100 million for each team. So every team has to spend $100 million no matter what. But to get the teams that are spending, say, 50 million right now up to that $100 million, they want any team that is over the luxury tax limit that they're setting of this new proposal of 180 million to pay the rest to pay like the $50 million for that team to get up from 50 million to 100 million.
yeah. So I have a few opinions on this. My first opinion is that I think that the 100 million spending floor, I think that's in general a good thing. I think if you look at there's a lot of different ways you can spend your money as a team, and I think that it doesn't necessarily mean if you're the Indians who have the lowest payroll in baseball, or I guess the Guardians soon, the Orioles, Pirates, teams that have really low payrolls. I don't think it necessarily means that you have to spend all that money on free agents and get big players. I mean, you could go make bad contract swaps too and acquire prospects through that. I mean, you've seen that a few times. With the Braves taking on Bronson Arroyo's contract to get Touki Toussaint. Trading Craig Kimbrell to the Padres to get rid of Melvin Upton Jr.'s contract. We heard a lot of talk at the deadline that the Padres were looking to move one of their top prospects along with Eric Hosmer to get out of that contract. So you do see that a pretty good bit. So I mean, you could be a team that's rebuilding and still, rebuild that way, and that can still you can still. I don't think it solves the whole tanking thing because there's other ways to do it, but um, I think if you're a Major League Baseball team, I mean, if you're getting outspent by $200 million, like what's the point? I mean, seriously. I mean, the Dodgers payroll is really high compared to everyone else, but still, even if it wasn't the Dodgers, I mean, you've got a $100 million payroll deficit to most of the top teams in the league. If you're Cleveland, and Cleveland would probably be a pretty good team this year if it wasn't for their limits, because I mean, they have several players that were star players on that team that they're not playing anymore because they're not on the team anymore because they traded them because they didn't want to pay them. So I mean, there are times where it would come through, but I mean, it's just one of those things. I think if you're MLB, I think that's a good thing, and I think lowering in response to that, also lowering the payroll limit on that luxury tax, I think it's a good thing too, because I think it's as opposed to doing a salary cap. but you don't put a hard cap. And I think the players should go for that, because I think what Major League Baseball would want is a cap. But I think that you also look at, I don't like the whole, we're going to have the top teams who are paying the tax, we're going to have that fund the players for the bottom teams to sign. I don't like that at all. I mean, I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair for the Dodgers to pay for the Orioles to get players. I mean,
Right.
I think that's pretty ridiculous. But I think they would have to negotiate something about that. And I think that's only a way to try to get all the owners to agree, because I think that a lot of the lower payroll owners are going to be unhappy with raising that floor. But I mean, you know, think about if the Rays had $100 million payroll. I mean, the Rays' current payroll is $70 million. They have $30 million open in that case, and I mean their team's already a World Series contender. So what if they added three players in Rays fashion for $10 million a piece that are pretty really good players? Like you know I don't understand why some of these teams aren't doing that already, but I guess it is what it is. So
Yeah, I'm all for the salary floor bumping up to the 100 million. Like, I think that's been needed for a long time because of teams like this tanking strategy where they're just like, oh, we'll just go spend $30 million, have a bunch of young guys who are basically making the league minimum just go out there and lose us all the games, and then we'll, be fine, and we'll just find a way to do it again next year and get the picks and wait 5 or 6 years for those top picks to be good, and good enough for the majors. But I we of course we don't know the full proposal, so this was kind of just the stuff that's barely getting leaked out. We don't know everything, but I think it would just be better just to put the floor in place and not really worry about the whole luxury tax issue. We had talked a little bit like maybe what if instead of 180 they went to 200 million, you give like $100 million thing, but right now the first tax limit's 210 million. Like, it's not even, I don't think it's very significant with trying to lower it down all that much. It's a big jump for the teams going from 60 million to 100 million, but you're going to throw it. Oh, you have to be 180 million when you have teams spending, like I said, the Dodgers this year is 230. Now that's with the whole, who knows with what's happening with the Bauer contract, and that could be 30 to 40 million off and whatever, but I mean, there's still other teams that are spending, upwards of $200
yeah,
million.
the Dodgers are at 267 right now because Bauer's still being paid.
Right.
So
I guess the thing I was looking at was
yeah.
without the Bauer
Yeah,
contract.
without Bauer, he would be about a little under 230, but with Bauer, they're at 267. But
Right.
like I say, he's still getting paid because of
The
he's
suspension.
not technically suspended yet.
Yeah.
He's on the administrative leave or whatever. I don't remember what the name of it's called, the exemption list or whatever it
Yeah.
is. So I think he's actually getting off of that pretty soon.
Well, they don't
So
know.
or
So not
they at least haven't extended. The players don't want to extend it again. I think was the players
well,
union.
it got extended to the 27th. So when this happened, it was last week, and they extended it. It was like last Tuesday, and they extended it um, to this Friday, and then we don't know what's happening at that point because they're still waiting for the Pasadena Police Department to file
Yeah, there's
charges or
still
whatever.
investigations and stuff going
Yeah,
on.
so
So it
anytime,
might get extended again, but
yeah,
we'll see.
because at that point it's going to come to Rob Manfred on what he wants to do with he can suspend him now, but risk the more information coming to light, whatever. But I expect it to just keep getting extended. But back to the point of the whole contracts thing, like asking the teams that have already have that to, oh, you have to I doubt they'd make them in one season cut salary down, but how would that be handled? Like, now if you're having a $180 million tax limit and you have the Dodgers payroll that's 200, and let's say they even cut a couple people off, they have a bunch of free agents this year, but say they get down to 220 this year, but it's 180. So what's that limit like right now? And are they a
Yeah,
first time offender in the new limit, or do you count them as a third
I
time offender under the new CBA?
my guess is, and this isn't anything that anybody knows for sure. It's just a guess, but my guess is that they would probably have some kind of grace period where, like, if you're it's not fair to have a team go out and say this is how much money you can spend and not be over the luxury tax, and then all of a sudden say, oh yeah, now it's $30 million less.
Yeah, and
Like,
you have to be under right
so
now.
yeah, so they might say, okay, in 3 years, this is going to go into effect so that, your contracts will fall off the books and you'll eventually get down to that 180. But obviously the Dodgers are what, $55 million over it right now. I mean, they're not going under the luxury tax anytime soon. I don't think they care about the luxury tax, honestly. So, some of these teams that the teams that it would affect a lot more are like the Mets and Astros and maybe the Yankees, who are just barely over. Like the Yankees currently are under the luxury tax, but they would be over the luxury tax under the new thing. So they would have to cut about $20 million. Like the Mets would have to cut $18 million. The Astros would have to cut $11 million. I mean, the Dodgers, either way, you're going to slice it. It's a lot. That's they're it would increase, and also the fact is, I did the math the other day. As long as I understand how the tax works and stuff, it would increase the Dodgers' total money spent by only like $6 million over what they're doing now. So it's really not that much, and I don't think $6 million is too much to the Dodgers. So, um, we'll see what happens with it. I'll be intrigued, and we'll see. Hopefully they'll come to a resolution. I think I was reading something the other day. I don't remember who it was. It was somebody who was supposedly an insider said that they thought that there was a sub 90% chance that this gets done before the season next year, but a well over 50-50 chance it does. So this has been a thing that not too many people have talked about, but people have been worried about for a while. This get done before next year. And I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces here, and there's been a lot of animosity between the players and the in the league since last year. So um, we'll see what happens. Hopefully everything goes smoothly, and we'll move on to 2022, and maybe have some new rules. But when it comes to spending, but I think in general, like the idea of having a lower salary cap but a higher floor should it should be good for both sides. It should be good for both the players and the owners. 'Cause I think the players still get paid a little bit more. I think it helps them make money doing that. But um,
I think
the owners,
it helps the average player get
yeah,
paid more, but I think it hurts how much your superstars can get paid.
maybe. But I mean, at the same time, like you have. If you look at total money spent, I mean, like Cleveland could then bring back Lindor on that contract that, if they're forced to spend $100 million, they would have brought back Lindor probably, and
Well,
probably
I
like,
I don't even
you
think
know,
that. I think what this allows teams to do is try to look to lock up their younger
yeah,
pieces sooner. Like instead of like, oh hey, we'll just play through the salary arbitration game. It's like, oh okay, well we'll just give you a 5-year contract, which would line up with when your free agency would have been anyways, and we'll pay you $50 million. Now you're getting paid $10 million a year, and that helps our salary floor.
yeah.
Like,
So we'll see what ends up happening. And I mean, I think that's in general something that the players would be happy about, because, if the superstars are getting paid $40 million or $35 million, like there's a big difference. Obviously, it's $5 million. It's a lot of money, but it's not that big of a difference. There's a big difference between getting like the league minimum and $10 million. So I think that's something that the players union is very in favor of. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm very, I'm optimistic about it. Like I say, I think that's something that would be I don't know if I'd call it an improvement, but uh, it's definitely I think it would be a good compromise to have. So we'll see what happens, though. I'll be interested. And there'll be a lot of coming out about this over the off season. This will probably be there will be spending a lot of off season talk about
yeah,
about the players in the league coming together on some of these things. So hopefully
yeah.
coming together. So
Yeah, this is probably the first 10 minutes of what we're going to spend probably 3 to 4 hours on throughout the throughout the break this off season. I could just see that coming up right now.
no
But
doubt.
well, let's jump to the kind of the series that we had talked about. Excuse me, the series we had talked about last week to kind of look forward to throughout that week. We had the Phillies and the Padres had a big series in San Diego that the Phillies ended up taking 2 of the 3, and they were actually leading on the other game that they lost. And I believe it was Aaron. They were trying to get a complete game out of Aaron Nola. He had like 116 pitches,
Yep.
and with bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, he gave up a 2-run homer to tie it.
Yeah, that was big, and it was big for the Padres and for the Phillies because the Braves won 9 games in a row before last night, and the Phillies trying to keep in touch, and I mean that was a big momentum swing. You're looking for your ace to go out there and complete that game, and then it's like boom, Cronenworth hits a home run, and then the Phillies lost the game in extras in embarrassing fashion on a wild pitch too. So,
I think it
that
was
was
that game.
big. It was. That's what I'm saying. They
Yeah.
lost that game in an embarrassing fashion on that wild pitch. So, it was one of those things where it's pretty crazy. It was a crazy game. And then, but Philly, give them credit because they lost 3 games to the Arizona Diamondbacks last week. They got swept by
Yeah.
the Arizona Diamondbacks, and it was they were. I mean, their whole fan. You know how Philly fans are. I mean, they were just berating the team and everything, and then they came back and were able to take 2 out of 3 against San Diego. That made it even more important to hold on to that series. So for now, the Philly is still in the picture. So, but and San Diego's in the picture too. But San Diego 2-8 in their last 10. I mean, you cannot get beat at home by a team that just got swept by the Diamondbacks and is really struggling. Like that can't happen. So, I mean, especially a team you're battling in the wild card race too.
Right.
So, that was a pretty bad weekend for the Padres.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the Padres in just a little bit. But let's go to the other team, like I said, per se, that we're looking at this week was the Oakland A's. They had, 4 games against the White Sox, and they had 3 games against the Giants. They ended up losing 3 of the 4 to the White Sox, and they lost 2 of 3 to the San Francisco Giants. And at least in the Giant series, I don't know about the White Sox series, but in the Giant series, on the games on Saturday and Sunday, they lost. They had a lead, I think, in both of those in the 8th inning and gave them both up on homers. I think Lamont Wade hit a game tying homer on Saturday, and then Donovan Solano hit like a 2-run. They were leading 1-0. He hit a 2-run homer to give the Giants the 2-1 lead on Sunday, and they lost that.
Yeah, you wonder what the Giants when this is going to stop because they've been all year. It's just been clutch moment after clutch moment for them,
It's
and
annoying.
yeah, and I mean it's been really remarkable that in it seems like every single time, every situation, um, they have had and where they were down by a run or up by a run, and the game was in trouble for them. They've somehow been able to win it. I mean, it's been one of the more remarkably clutch teams I can remember, and obviously 2 more this weekend. I mean, against Oakland, and that hurt Oakland pretty good. They're falling back, especially with the Yankees having won 10 in a row. Have really cemented themselves as at least one of the wild cards. They're still 4.5 back from the Rays, but um, Oakland kind of battling with the Red Sox now, and game and a half back. So a team that looked like it was probably going to end up being a playoff team in Oakland, for a while there. Now a little bit back in the wild card, but they are kind of in the race in the West. They're only 4 games back, so I mean, I guess they could still somehow pull out the West. Houston's been struggling lately, but uh, definitely an interesting weekend for both of those teams. So um, good 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 weekend for good weekend for the Giants. Hang tight against some good competition. So
Yeah, that's annoying. They need to stop. No, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Giants right here too. And that was against the New York Mets this week, who had the 3 game series against San Francisco, and then went to a 4 game series against the Dodgers. They lost 2 of the 3 to San Francisco, and then they lost 3 of 4 to the Dodgers in LA. And they're actually playing the Giants again, the beginning of this week, and they lost 8-0 today. Um, I didn't realize the I knew the Mets were on a bad stretch, but now they're 2 games under 500 after today's loss. For a team that had kind of been leading, that division for much of the season, and now that it sounds like DeGrom's out for the year, um, this was a pretty rough couple weeks for the New York Mets.
yeah, a very tough week for the Mets. I guess they did pull out a game against the Dodgers and a game against the Giants, which, when you're playing in LA and in San Francisco, typically the goal would probably be this year, the 2 best records in baseball, it would be just don't get swept. So I guess, they didn't get swept, but when you're, having had led the NL East for a lot of the year, and a team that's supposed to be competing. Um, I mean, they really need to do more than that because they're now 6.5 games behind the Braves. They're about to lose tonight to the Giants, so they'll be seven back. They'll probably still be 6.5 back. 'Cause, the Braves have a rally going with 2 outs in the ninth against the Yankees, but are probably going to lose this game. But um, you look at the Mets and I mean, they just don't have the offense. They've had some injuries. Lindor's underperformed, but he's been out for a while. So even when he had started turning the corner a little bit, he's still been injured. He got injured, and then I mean, they didn't really do too much at the trade deadline. They went out and grabbed Javi Baez from the Cubs, but he's been not good at all when he's played, and he's had a little bit of injury too since he got there. So um, obviously, like you said, DeGrom being out for the year. Honestly, I mean, I feel like the Mets, it could have been worse. I mean, you go to LA and you did salvage a game, and you salvaged a game in San Francisco, and you were at least competitive in most of those games. So it's just one of those things. That's a tough part of your schedule, and you got to fight through that. And but 7 games, 6.5 games back at this point is going to be tough to overcome, I think, especially when you got to pass two teams that are probably better than you are anyway. So
Yeah, I didn't realize how bad this Met stretch had been over the past couple of weeks until really looking at it right now. Right as we were kind of like looking at the series and whatever. I knew that the Dodgers had swept them there, and then they had been struggling with the Giants and the Dodgers again. But very very disheartening season, for the Mets, especially with such high expectations after bringing in Lindor and Carrasco, who's really struggled so far, and then trading for Baez. I know they have faced a lot of injuries this year. Thor hasn't really been able to recover. We thought he'd be back by now, and he's still kind of doing mound
apparently,
works.
I will say on him, apparently he was throwing a bull or a simulated game the other day and actually threw pretty good and felt good. So I don't know
Yeah,
if he might end up coming back before the end of the season. Now I don't know if he does. I kind of doubt it, especially if they end up they're 6.5 games back. So if they don't pull out a few wins here, they'll probably just shut him down for the and have him ready next year. But
yeah. So
uh, he has been looking like he might come back.
the interesting part about that is I had never heard of this either until it happened. He threw that simulated game in Dodger Stadium, which is really interesting because usually they don't throw simulated games away from your home ballpark. Usually you just do that at your own thing. But he threw that in LA.
Yeah, he was throwing
On
to. I saw him. He was throwing to Lindor and Baez, and people were saying that
Yeah,
the Mets simulated game roster was better than their active roster.
yeah,
But
yeah. No, but I mean they already shut down Degrom pretty much. I think they said there was like a 99% chance that they're not going to bring Degrom back this year. And I think that's kind of just signaling either the white flag with that they know they're not going to be competitive, or it speaks to how bad Degrom's injury is, or how he's not recovering well, which is also another
yeah,
scary sight for a guy like Jacob Degrom. With
yeah,
how hard he's been throwing and stuff.
I feel like it's one of those things where if you're the Mets, you have you know you're 6.5 back, so you don't want to push it on stuff. Now, if they made the playoffs, if they somehow miraculously went on a run and made up all these games, because they're not going to win, they're not going to make the wild card. If they somehow made up all these games and made the playoffs and won the division, then maybe Jacob Degrom could be back. I think he could. But based on the way that things have been reported so far, it sounds like he's been encouraged not to pitch, but he maybe could if they were in a situation to. But you got to remember at the same time that Jacob Degrom's a guy, or that he's a guy that you don't want to get injured because in the future. I mean, the Mets, even if they make the playoffs, probably aren't doing anything this year. Like they're not going to probably won't beat the Brewers. Wouldn't beat the Brewers. They're not going to beat the Dodgers. They're not going to beat the Giants. They're not going to beat the Padres if they made it in. I doubt they could beat the Reds if they made it in. So if you're the Mets, I mean, I think you look to next year, but you don't want to end up in a situation like the Padres got in with Lamet, Clevenger trying to come back and pitch and tearing up their elbows, and now missing the season of contention and the season of their prime. So hopefully they make the right decisions here. And I don't trust the Mets to make the right decisions with their pitching staff injuries because that's not what they're known for. But I think in this case, so far they have at least in this case. So maybe they'll make the right decision here.
Yeah, maybe they will. Well, let's look forward to kind of the series that we have going this week, and then we'll jump to players of the week and wrap this up. But the Braves and Yankees started a series yesterday, get a little 2-game series. The Yankees won the first game, and like you said, it's in the bottom of the ninth right now with 2 outs. They have a 5-3 lead. So that's a series. The Braves then go on to play the Giants for 3 over the weekend, which is going to be a massive series for 2 first place teams. You got the Dodgers and Padres starting a 3-game series tonight. That's a massive thing because the in the NL West, the Padres are now out of the wild card spot. They are, last time I checked, at least
I think
they're
one game
game
back at the Reds.
yeah, they're 1 game back of the Reds. But it's also a big series for them against the Dodgers. They've played really well, and they've kind of stepped up against the Dodgers this year. So this could be a series that helps get the Padres back on track because they've really struggled a lot lately, and they're missing some of their pitchers. But I think they said Yu Darvish is supposed to come back against one of these games in the Dodgers series. They haven't announced which one just yet, though. So that's going to be an interesting series. And then over the weekend, it's going to be a big series in the AL wildcard picture, and that's the Yankees and the A's going for 4.
Yeah, so those are some big games. The Yankees and the A's are really close together in the wild card race, but of course the Yankees haven't been as hot as they are. You kind of expect them to kind of take over that first wild card spot / maybe catch the Rays if they keep playing like this. You look at and the A's need to win a couple of those games, so um, that'll be interesting to see what happens there. 4 games. I mean, that could be a big swing if the A's can win 3 of those games or something. Then I think that'd be huge, and it's in Oakland, so the Yankees have to fly across country to do that and stuff. Look at the other series, the Braves and the Giants. I think that's a big series. It's in Atlanta. The Braves will need to win a couple games. I think the Phillies' schedule is pretty easy this weekend, so it's it's interesting, but we'll see what happens. We'll we'll be it'll be I think it'll be 2 very good series, and the Braves have a lot of connections to the Giants right now. Kevin Gossman being the ace for the Giants, like he was a Brave a couple years ago, and that'll be a fun series. And then who else what was the other one we were talking about? Was it the Padres and the Dodgers? I mean
Yeah.
that's always a good series these days. So that'll be fun, and we'll see. It'll be an interesting finish to the season, and interesting week for sure. Some big battles this week.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And we'll be sure to fill you guys in on next week on what has happened with those series. But let's go ahead and jump over to our players of the week. And we'll start with, who do you have for your pitcher of the week?
So my pitcher of the week this week is excuse me. It is man, who did I don't even try to remember who I picked.
Sandy Alcantara.
Yes, Sandy Alcantara. He pitched a beauty against the Braves the other night. Sorry, apologies for my distraction the last couple of minutes. This Braves game is getting wild right now. We might have a game to talk about next week. There's been some controversy here, but Sandy Alcantara has been really good. He had a great game against Atlanta the other night. 8 innings. I think it might have been 7 2/3 innings actually, but gave up 1 run on a little bloop hit at the end of the game. What a very just spectacular. And then he came out through a seven innings, only 2 runs. 180 ERA on the week. That's a 2-start week, 15 innings pitched. I don't know if he was the best pitcher this week. But one of the pitchers that I had in mind, he was my pick last week at Adam Wainwright because he pitched really good again this week in 2 starts. So, but I went with Sandy Alcantara. He's been good.
Yeah, so my pitcher this week is Logan Webb from San Francisco Giants. He has been, a nice, really surprise for them, a 2.84 ERA on the season. But over the last month, really since Anthony DeSclafani's been struggling and Kevin Gossman's really been struggling, and he's kind of stepped up. And he's a 1.69 ERA, a .94 WHIP, 6 quality starts. But over his last, the 2 games he had this week, 13 and a third innings, he had a 2.03 ERA, had 10 strikeouts per 9, which is really good, and a 1.35 walks per 9. He's really stepped up for the Giants when those guys have been struggling. I know he's pitched a couple good games against the Dodgers, but And he had a really good start against Oakland over the weekend, which is I was watching a little bit of that game. And that's kind of what threw him out to me a little bit more. But
Yeah.
really good week for Logan Webb, and kind of exactly what the Giants have needed, since those other guys who were really good for them from the start of the year have kind of starting to come back down to earth. But the two guys have been struggling for them, but Logan Webb and Alex Wood have kind of stepped up lately.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I was reading some stuff. A lot of people have been talking about Logan Webb, and it's one of those situations where if you have like impeccable command, it doesn't matter about the stuff. So he's been. I haven't watched him too much, but apparently his command has been on point for the most part. So good for Logan Webb. But my hitter this week is Ahmed Rosario. We talked last week a little bit about the Little League game, the Little League Classic that was played in Williamsport between the Indians and the Angels, and it was pretty cool. Ahmed Rosario apparently is Mr. Williamsport because I think they were talking about during the game how great he was there 2 years ago when the Mets played there. And Ahmed Rosario was a member of the Mets, and then he went off in that game again this week. Hit a home run, had three or four hits. But on the week, as in general, had a 500 average across 24 plate appearances. So pretty nice week for him. He's a good defensive player too. So really really solid week for Ahmed Rosario.
Yeah, Mud Rosario is one of my favorite players to watch this year. I picked him up in my fantasy league, and he's done pretty much everything I could have expected this year. And like you said, in that Williamsport game, he just had one of the best games he's had all year long. And he's really fun to watch with his combination of the power he can have and speed at the same time. But my hitter that I went with this week was Ty France from the Seattle Mariners. He's having a really good season overall, and I think he's just kind of been under the radar. But he hit 4 homers this week, a 393 average, a 400 on base. He doesn't walk very much, only 3% walk rate this week compared to a 23.3 strikeout percentage this week. But some of his homers were big clutch homers, tied the game. I think was one of them was a late game tying homer, and one of them was a go ahead homer. I think in like the 8th or the 9th as well. 236 WRC plus on the week. There was no real big hitter standouts of the week. There's a bunch of that had a decent week, kind of grouped all around right here. But
Yeah.
Ty France was one of the more under radar guys who's having a fantastic season, let alone this week alone.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ty France, 3.1 wins above replacement on the season, really solid, 132 WRC plus, and it's a guy they got for Austin Nola, not Aaron Nola, Austin Nola in that trade last year with the Padres. So very interesting stuff there from Austin Nola.
Yeah, well, no, and Ty France's
I mean,
OPS.
Ty France. Sorry, I meant
No,
that's
yeah,
what I meant.
I got you. And his OPS over the last month has been 944,
Wow,
like
that's
in
very impressive.
114 plate appearances. So it's not like he's in a little bit of plate
Yeah.
appearances. He's getting a good run amount of time, and he's performing really well.
Yeah, I mean, his season OPS is in the what is it,
828
828. I mean, that
with
that's
a
pretty solid. And
292 batting average.
yeah, and then you add in the fact that over the past month he's been so good. I definitely am. I love what he's done. So
Yeah,
um,
big
this year.
big Ty France fan.
Yep. And people talk about how they don't know how the Mariners are doing good. It's because guys like Ty France, J.P. Crawford, some of these guys have played really well this year. So,
Yeah,
um, anyways, but good stuff. We'll see what they can do going forward.
yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything else you kind of want to wrap up on?
Uh, I think that's pretty much it. As we've discussed, pennant race is coming up. Everything's getting down, and every game's intense. We've been seeing a lot of playoff atmospheres this week too, and starting the last couple weeks. And I think they've seen it in Atlanta the last couple nights. Definitely see it you'll definitely see it in the Padres Dodgers series. I don't even know where is that series.
San Diego.
San Diego. Okay, yeah, you're
Yeah.
definitely going to see it in that series. Then you're going to see playoff atmospheres all over the place in these big series, late season. So be very interesting. But I think I'm going to have to wrap it up because Freddie Freeman's come to the plate with the bases loaded and 2 outs and a 1-run game now. So Chapman got Chapman did not pitch well tonight. So. Um, but anyways, we'll see what happens, and I'm excited for the next couple weeks. I think it's going to be really fun, and hopefully we'll have a lot to talk about next week. So
Yeah, well, we'll let you jump back to that game because it does seem like it's a pretty intense moments going over there in the Arcara household right now. So thank you
I
guys
feel
for
I feel bad because I've been, I'm trying real hard to focus and it's going on in the background and it's this big game
man. Trust
and
me, that's why I don't even like right now. The Dodgers and Padres game is playing, and I don't even have it
yeah.
turned
I
on right
would
now.
Yeah, I would hate myself if I missed the Braves coming back to beat the Yankees, or if
Oh,
just this game. This game's been really fun in general, but I would hate myself if I missed it. So
yeah.
I had to turn it on. But man, that not the best decision if you're trying to do a podcast. But hey, you know what? We're a baseball podcast. We're talking about how much we love baseball, and it's hard to turn off sometimes. So
That happens. Well,
yeah,
thank everyone for tuning into this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week.
thanks everybody.